Rachel, and as you might have been able to tell, I have a new cat companion. Her name is Missy, and I just got her from the Humane Society yesterday, so we're still very much getting used to each other, and she's getting used to my condo. The people at the shelter actually said that she'd probably hide for a while, but she hasn't done that. She's been keen to explore my one-bedroom condo, but I think after her exploration she decided she really likes that space back there, where there's I have this long oblong wooden box, and on top of it is a cat bed. It's, you know, it's all blocked by the bed, but you can see her so long as she's standing, I think, and we'll see if she stays there throughout the video. Anyway, it's late June and I just finished my 50th book of 2018, so I thought this seems to be a good time to do the mid-year freakout tag. The mid-year freakout tag is something that I saw get a lot of traction last year, and I enjoyed doing it so much that I knew from the get-go that I'd want to reprise the meme, and what do you know, I've seen it cropping up in other booktube accounts, so I'm not alone in that thought. It's a great way to really take stock of your reading, especially for people like me who I feel like I'm constantly rushing, and I talk so much in all my videos about oh my god, there's so much to read, I'm so overwhelmed. So at least now I can, you know, take a step back and revisit the highlights. Also, as a forewarning, because I think I'm technically more on adult booktube than YA booktube, but my inner YA fantasy fangirl might be coming out a little bit. Also, I took these questions from, I think, a variety of different sources, so I'll leave all of the attribution links down below. So question number 1 is, what is the best book I've read so far in 2018? And my favorite book is All I Love and Know by Judith Frank, and it is a book about a intercontinental family with members in America and Jerusalem. It centers primarily on 2 twin brothers of sorts. One of the twin brothers and his wife are victims of a terrorist attack in Jerusalem. And in a surprising twist, they give custody of their 2 children, a 4-year-old named Gal and a 1-year-old named Noam, to the brother's brother, Danny, and his lover, Matthew, who live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I believe. And so it's a book that spans a lot. It spans a lot about the political Israeli-Palestinian situation, and about gay culture, and about just family schisms. And I just found it to be really fleshed out, and the characters were just very believable and very moving, and I was very impressed. Question 2 is the best sequel I've read so far in 2018, and this is where my YA fantasy side comes in, although I know technically this isn't fantasy. This is Now I Rise, which is book 2 of the Conqueror saga by Kiersten, which imagines Vlad the Impaler as a teenage girl. So I'm still saying that none of this actually could have happened, hence fantasy. And you know, it has the tropes, the general tropes of YA fantasy as it is, with this sort of magnanimous world building and a lot of violence and sexual tension and so forth. But I just find it really fun and really compelling with the questions that it's raising, and also the way that White, you know, weaves in real history with these badass teens. Question 3 is the best short story collection that I've read so far this year, and I am embarrassed to say I have only read 1 short story collection so far this year, which I liked well enough. It was the best American short stories of 2017. I think it would be 17. It was published in October of 2017, maybe it is 2018. Anyway, it's the one that's edited by Meg Wolitzer, guest edited by Meg Wolitzer. So yeah, that was fine. That was good. But I am ashamed to say that I haven't read any other short story collections this year, because I try to think of myself as some sort of short story advocate as I write some of them. And what do you know, I have made it a priority for a couple of Julys in a row to read new short story collections. It's my birthday month, so I figure that's a good time to do it. And For the last couple years, I've been making and doing the Try a Short Story tag that Jen Campbell started, so be on the lookout because I'll have that up in the next couple days to weeks. Question 4 is new releases that I want to read but haven't gotten to yet. So I'm going to go to my anticipated reads videos that I made in late 2017 and early 2018. So the books I haven't read yet are that are out now are A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir, which just came out, OBSIDIO by Amy Kaufman and J. Kristoff, Fire Dance by Ilana C. Myer, and Before Mars by Emma Newman. I'll get to them. Some of them I'm waiting for on audio, so that makes it a bigger complication, especially if they're not all on my overdrive at the library and I have to, you know, find workarounds. I don't have an Audible account. I think about it sometimes and then I think, the expense, and I have the library and blah blah blah, but anyway, that's reader problems for you. Question number 5 is most anticipated releases for the second half of 2018. So again, I will go back to those anticipated videos and talk about a couple of books. First is Record of a Spaceborn Few by Becky Chambers, which is out, I'm just looking at my notes here, on July 24th. I believe when I showed the cover in that video from before, it really wasn't finalized yet, and this is the final UK cover. I really do prefer the UK covers to the clip artish US covers, but for some reason this US cover doesn't bother me as much as the others in the Wayfarer series. Maybe it's the color scheme. And then the next book I want to talk about is called Dagger and Coin by Kathy McMillan. It is a companion novel to Sword and Verse, which is a YA fantasy novel. Kathy McMillan is a friend of a friend, and in fact my friend was a beta reader of hers. And I'd said in that anticipated video that there were rumors that her second book would be coming out this year, but at the time there wasn't a title or a cover, but now this is the title of the cover. And it's coming out on October 9th, if I haven't said that already. And meanwhile, sticking to YA fantasy land, it is the land of sequels, so that lends itself to anticipated reads. First we have Bright We Burn, which is number 3 in the Conqueror saga by Kiersten White, and it's coming out very soon on July 5th. And second I have The Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, coming out on October 2nd. Future Rachel here, and Zootalo, I missed one. I completely skipped over question number 6, which was, what is your biggest disappointment so far of 2018? And maybe I skipped over it because I figure this is going to be kind of controversial. But my biggest disappointment so far of the year is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. The acclaimed classic sci-fi. And the funny thing is that I still think about it a lot, and I think a lot of the stuff that he brought up is applicable to life and to literature, and it keeps cropping up in what I think about, and even scarily, I find myself drawn to what I shouldn't be, because, especially when watching the movie, I guess, because the HBO movie, because sometimes, you know, the world and politics can be so overwhelmingly depressing that I kind of want to be like Michael Jordan playing Montag and say, damn, it's so good to burn. Like, maybe I just don't want to think about anything anymore, and why have any opinions anymore when they're just so exhausting, and let's just burn it all. And that's what Bradbury is, you know, warning against. Like, you know, how easy it is to give up control of it because things can be so exhausting, and you know, it takes a lot of mind power to think about complicated thoughts and all of that. But what I didn't like about the book is the way it was written. It's a polemic. He's just yelling at me the whole time, and I couldn't take it anymore. It's, you know, badly written, the characters weren't engaging, and it was one-dimensional. I mean, and you know, it was so obviously a short story that was stretched too long. And so it's a case of, I really like the ideas, I don't like the execution. Question 7 is the biggest surprises for me so far this year, and I have 2 answers. One is more general. I'm reading a lot of Jewish-themed nonfiction, and I guess I'm surprised by something that shouldn't have been surprising to me, but the interconnectedness of the subjects, about how things crop up in one book and then the next book, about identity, politics, and what have you. And I guess it really shouldn't surprise me, because I'm primarily reading about Jewish history, and particularly American Jewish history. But even when I read books that aren't about American Jewish history, it all just, there's so many common themes that come in about persecution and looking for a homeland, and looking to assert yourself, and looking towards Zionism, and the advent of Zionism in the 20th century. It all is just coming out, and just continues to ebb and flow throughout these books. And the second thing I'll talk about is an actual book, All Are Wrong Todays by Ilana Mastai. I don't know, I guess what surprised me is I misinterpreted the book to begin with. I thought from the cover copy that it was about alternative timelines, which it is, but I didn't think of the A to B to C part of it. It's a book about a utopian future, kind of like a Jetsons type future, where there's this sort of screw-up kid who goes back in time, and you know, fumbles something up, and then gets us all stuck in our 2016, which is dystopian to their world. So that was kind of fun, and it was surprising to me how the book made me depressed about our reality. It felt positively medieval. And I guess another thing that surprised me is that it is obviously this is a book that poses a lot of science-y type questions about the nature of reality, and every time I seem to have a doubt nickel up, they actually did address it in the text. I don't think I agree with all of Mastai's conclusions, but you can't deny he was very thorough in his timeline philosophy. Question 8 is favorite debut or new to you author of 2018 so far, and this was a debut in 2016, I believe, because it won the Reading Women's Prize for Best Fiction in 2016, and it is Shelter by Jun Young. And I never would have read this without the Reading Women podcast, so I'm just so grateful for Kendra Winchester and BookTube. But it is a book about a Korean-American family. The primary character is a 30-something man named Kyung. He and his wife are in a lot of debt, and they'd really like to move to a smaller, more affordable house, but they're in so much debt that they can't afford to move. They can't afford to put their house on the market because they wouldn't get enough for it. And in the midst of all of that, he's sort of estranged from his parents, who have a strained relationship with themselves and with him, and his mother ends up like stumbling into his life again, and she's naked and confused, and it turns out is the victim, along with her father, of this horrible home robbery situation where the people robbed them and then kept them hostage for a while, and there's a lot of physical and sexual assault that went on. It's a very dark novel in that way, but it focuses on the recovery, and also just the relationships between the family members. And it's sort of one of those things where Kyung isn't the most likable character. He kind of makes everything about himself, although with his backstory with his parents, you gotta feel a little something for him. But anyway, it's just a deep character study about the ways that we hurt each other, and the ways that family does and doesn't work, and the mistakes that we make. And I know one of the things I think I was thinking about with the double things going on with Kyung not really being able to afford his home, and his parents' elaborate quote-unquote perfect home being invaded, is what is the definition of shelter? That's obviously low-hanging fruit, but the story was just really well crafted and very engaging. Question 9 is your newest favorite fictional crush, and I know most people I've seen who address this question do so with an eye roll or a sustained silence, but I'm going to talk about a relationship that I like. And that is the love triangle, as it were, in the Conqueror saga between Lada, who is the female of Vlad the Impaler, Mehmed, who is actually based off of the Sultan, and Radu, who is Lada slash Vlad's brother. So it's not an actual love triangle. There's no incest going on. It's more like a pair of siblings have romantic feelings for the Sultan Mehmed. And what I like about it is that I was proven right about some things. It's not, you know, lovey-dovey, gushy, save the world sort of romance. It's all very toxic and Wuthering Heights-esque. I was so thrilled when reading the sequel that I just talked about, because it just proved so much that Lada and Mehmed see each other as mirror images of their quests for power and their desire for conquest. And meanwhile, Radu has a bit of a crush on Mehmed, and Mehmed's kind of using him for it in a way, but Radu's crush doesn't remain stagnant. It changes, it alters based on things that are going on in the books. So it's not just, you know, the lovey-dovey blindness. It's based on strong feelings of camaraderie in childhood and teenagehood, but it's not stagnant. And finally, it's not the romantic part of the love triangle, but there's a lot of love and hate between the siblings, so that's also incredibly compelling. And you know, just a reminder that romance isn't the only strong relationship out there. Question 10 is, who is your newest favorite character? So I'm going to go with Danny from All I Love and Know. He is the brother of the slain man in the terrorist attack, the one who gains custody of his niece and nephew, and is in a relationship with non-Jewish and male Matthew in the US. And so there's a lot going on with Daniel. He was, along with his twin brother Joel, he grew up going to like Jewish camps and became a Zionist, had very strong feelings about Israel. He and his brother moved to Israel for a while. His brother stayed in Israel. They learned Hebrew. They felt a great affinity. And then Danny had a bit of a falling out, I guess, because of the conflict about the negatives, the long list of negatives about the conflict. So he has conflicted feelings about Israel that come through a lot, because he's lost his brother and feels awful about that, but he also feels awful about how the Palestinians are treated, and he's struggling and grappling with how to be a father figure to two traumatized kids. And then he also has this, you know, unorthodox, if you were, relationship with his lover, who is an outsider in faith, and also because he's a man rather than a woman, you know, so traditionally not accepted. I mean, his family isn't, you know, homophobic and shutting him out, but there's definitely tensions there. And meanwhile, Danny just, you know, he's going through a lot, and you can see the ways that he's struggling, and you can see the stupid mistakes he makes, and and then there's the stuff that just reminds me of myself to a degree, like the desperate attempts at attending all of those lectures that take place where Israelis and Palestinians talk about the experiences that they're going through and all of that, and just trying to make sense of it all and to be a peace advocate. So that part of Danny I really identified strongly with, and other parts I kind of wanted to, you know, knock him on the head a little bit, and other parts I felt for him as an aunt myself. Not as the primary caregiver to my own niece and nephew, but as someone who definitely wants to be there for them. And so I really liked Danny. He was a good three-dimensional character. I think his name might have been Daniel. He might have not gone by Danny. It has been a little while. Question 11 is to name a book that made you cry, and I'm going with Girls Burn Brighter by Shobha Rao. It is a novel, her debut novel, about these two very poor girls in India who are living together for a while, and they form a really deep friendship. But because of their societies and just various forms of misogyny, they're pulled apart and put into really horrible situations. And just, it's a testament of the brutality and how how misogynistic societies can strip away at people's humanity bit by bit by bit, and about what it takes, like this internal flame, to burn bright and to stay human and to stay a survivor. And we just go through the lives of these young girls, these teenage girls really, and particularly one of them who is constantly on the lookout for the other, trying to track her down again and to reunite with her. And near the end of the book, there's this scene with one of the girls, Savitha, in a public bathroom, and she's just been robbed, and she's in a completely foreign country, and nobody's stopping to help her. They all look at her like she's a parasite, and she's just, you can feel her at the end of her rope, that just too much has happened to her, too much is stripped away at her humanity, that she could just die there in that bathroom. And it was so intense and just so heartbreaking, like what it takes to break a person and to see that person breaking. I mean, it's not the torture porn of it all I mean, that's heartbreaking too, but what's really heartbreaking, what this really drives home is what's heartbreaking is how people can break under all of this and how your humanity can be stripped away. And I think that's the only scene of a book so far that I've really sobbed at. I cried because it was so heartbreaking. And Shobha Rao is a monster. She did it to me with her short stories too. She's brilliant, but she's a monster. Question number 12 is the book that made you most happy so far. So I'm going to go with Tempests and Slaughter by Tamara Pierce, a return to YA fantasy. It is the start of her prequel set of novels about Aram Draper, aka Newman, who is a powerful sage, a mage, whoops, in one of her fantasy worlds. And these books about that start with Tempest and Slaughter are about his upbringing in Karthik and his relationships that turn bad with Emperor Orzorn and Varys, his one-time lover. I mean, we know they turn bad because we know how they turn out in this book. This is Emperor Mage, and this book came out when I actually was a teenager, so you can't judge me too harshly for feeling the geeky glee at getting a prequel series to this, which is my favorite of all the Tamara Pierce books that I've read. I love this book. And I really did like Tempest and Slaughter, and re-entering this world and getting a more complex picture in a lot of ways of some of the main characters and secondary characters that turn up in this book. So, and also, all of us who are Tamara Pierce fans have been waiting for years and years and years and years, where she's been promising this book and this series, and it's finally here, and hopefully the next few books will be coming out quickly. Demanding fans, I know. But it makes me squee. Question 13 is your favorite book to film adaptation. Honestly, I'm not sure if any film adaptations that I've seen this year stick out to me as favorites. I haven't seen that many, and I kind of feel a little about a lot of them. And actually, just recently I posted to my reading and writing blog reviews of A Wrinkle in Time and Disobedience. So I'll link that post down below. It'll talk about my pluses and minuses about the adaptations. But while I was in the theater waiting to watch Disobedience, which is an indie film, I saw an ad for another indie film adaptation that's coming out in August. It is The Wife by Meg Wolitzer. Meg Wolitzer is one of my favorite authors, although The Wife isn't my favorite of her books, but still, you know, she's Meg Wolitzer, and I'm excited to see what they do with the book, especially because Glenn Close is playing the main character. That's cool. Question 14 is my favorite review or favorite booktube video so far this year, and I don't really have a favorite that jumps out at me, but I really want to give my kudos to all of you, my thank yous really, to all of you who have commented on my videos about my content or have friended me on Goodreads and liked my reviews over there. It's just so humbling and also so thrilling that my thoughts about these books have an impact in the wider world. So thank you so much, and I hope you continue to find my thoughts about books to be intriguing. Question 15 is the most beautiful book that I've bought or received so far this year. So this is Beneath the Haunting Sea by Joanna Ruth Myer. It is a debut YA fantasy novel. And this is a novelist who I also know somewhat through NaNoWriMo, actually. We were part of a Vidler community together a few years ago, and she was talking a lot about drafting this novel, and I was intrigued by how dedicated she was to the whole process, so I kept up with her, and I eagerly bought her first book at the beginning of the year, and I enjoyed it. I think there's some great world building through mythology and music that came out in this book. But she lives in Arizona and I live in DC, so although I got the book, I was a little depressed because I figured I could never get it signed. But what do you know, just recently she had some extra book plates that she wanted to send out to people, you know, to promote her book, and I thought, hey, I want to get in on that train, so I messaged her through Twitter and I got this. I got the book plate that's personalized to me, huzzah! I got a nice bookmark, and then this is a special post-it note about NaNoWriMo, so extra special and extra personal. And finally, number 16. What are the books that I have to read by the end of the year? Well, of course, as we all know, no one has to read any books, blah, 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 blah. I'm lying. I have books I want to read. Particularly, I have booktube videos that I want to make on certain themes, so hence I have to read the books. First of all, I want to finish my Sammy Rohr nonfiction reading project. Then I want to finish the Meg Wolitzer backlist. I have 3 books left. Then there's Sci-Fi September, and there's so much sci-fi, some of which I mentioned earlier as not having read yet, that I want to get to. And then I have a list of Jewish fiction published in 2017 that I want to get to by the end of the year. I've been slowly chipping away at it all year. And I've particularly earmarked one of them for Women in Translation Month, which takes place in August. And I'm going to be reading Waking Lions by Ayelet Gundergoshen, which is about an Israeli doctor who I actually believe has vehicular manslaughter of an Ethiopian immigrant, and about the repercussions of all of that. So that about covers it for me now. I'm hoping, here's Missy, she's kind of in frame here, she just jumped onto the bed. So I'm hoping I should wrap it up here so I can edit this thing quickly and then spend a little bit of time with her and hopefully build up that bond between girl and cat. Wish me luck, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well with your mid-year check-ins, if you're doing them officially or not. You know, updating on booktube or what have you, but I'd love to hear how you're doing. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.